Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Canary in cahoots. Also, the V-Team takes a look at rape and detainee consent. And the orgy of greed and corruption has returned.
All hail Caesar, Emperor of Rome, monarch of the Roman Empire, ruler of the world.
Hail Caesar! 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 Hail Caesar!
Wait, is it just me? I think my cupboard's put on some weight. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome.
Hi. Hello. Hi, Charlie.
Hi, guys.
So glad you're with us today.
Charlie's back.
That's right. It's, you know, Josh, it's just been the craziest thing. This session was supposed to be controversy-free, and as we get into the show today, we're going to show it's been anything but controversy-free.
Yeah, well, we're too dumb typically to be controversy-free. So I mean, really, we can't stay out of our own way.
No,
so
that's true.
That's exactly how it's going to go for us.
Something that hasn't come up in the legislature, and something, frankly, I wasn't aware of, I don't think any of us were aware of, is that Alabama is one of 35 states that doesn't have what's called a detainee consent law. And this goes back to where an 18-year-old, her name was Anna, she was arrested in a car in a vacant lot by two undercover policemen that were on duty. They took her, handcuffed her, put in the back of a police van, and repeatedly raped her over the course of the evening. They dropped her back off where they had picked her up. There were no charges filed or anything else. But they had raped her, and when they were caught having raped her, Josh, they said that she had consented. And now we found that there are case after case after case where women have been sexually molested, raped, all that, and the cops got off because they said it was detainee consent.
I've never, when you told me about this, I had never heard of this before, and because I guess maybe I'd been to the State House many times, and I thought I had seen all the awfulness that there could possibly be, but how is it possible that that's a thing? That police can arrest someone and put them in handcuffs, and they can consent to have sex with them. I mean, you can't do that with a prisoner. So we're trying to beat the conviction? Is that what we're trying to do?
Now, what makes this worse is that they had spotted the car, and there was apparently marijuana in the car. It wasn't just her. There were two guys in the car. They handcuffed her, arrested her, and sent them on their way. There was clearly an intent there.
I mean, Chandler, we've seen there are some 700 cases of this being accused, and almost half of the cops have walked free.
Oh, of course. And what it really ultimately comes back to, it's just a gross abuse of power that we're always, and what I don't get, have we just thrown professionalism out the window here? In what mindset does a cop wake up in the morning thinking that they can do this with no repercussions whatsoever? But honestly, that's what they get. They don't get any repercussions.
Yeah, and it's a small minority of them that do it, but it's like the whole apparatus is broken. because of this good old boy culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small minority of people who break laws anyway, you know, in general. And so, I mean, you know, obviously that percentage will hit on cops as well. I just don't understand how it can possibly be that this is, I mean, how. What's going on? What is going on?
And you and I have sat in enough courtrooms, we all have, that know that police, when they get on the stand, some of them, not all of them, some of them, especially ones in trouble, will lie on the stand under oath.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's human nature.
Yeah.
But the problem is that cops' word has a lot more weight than the average citizen. And it should if they're doing their job. But Susan, there was another officer arrested in Arizona or charged with this thing in Arizona before they passed their law. And he said that even though the woman was in handcuffs, she came on to him and sodomized him.
Yes.
You know,
In handcuffs. Yeah, that's kind of a
He got away with it.
That's kind of a Houdini-ish.
Because he was so irresistible.
Must have been.
I mean,
What was the other word you used for that? Wouldn't that be bribery?
Yeah, bribery, yeah. It would be bribery.
well, I mean, and you know, you got to look at the culture here. All right, think about right here in Alabama. You had this police chief who came out and said, well, silence is consent. That's cool. I mean, if you're silent, you know, it's consent.
No. I mean, and that's part of Alabama's kind of antiquated rape laws that are here too. You know, that you have to, you know, women are supposed to put up some physical fight there, or they can't claim rape later. And that's part of our laws here that we need to see about changing as well. But I mean, I just can't imagine in what world this is okay, or why anybody would think that this shouldn't be changed.
Right, but I mean, Charlie, think about it. Our Attorney General allowed a assistant district attorney in his office in Marshall County, allowed him to almost rape a woman, seriously assault her. And what did he do?
Nothing. He skirted it off like it was no big deal.
I mean, how do you, I mean, as a young woman, you know, how would you feel if, you know, for some reason you got sexually assaulted and your boss said, well, get over it, honey. It's not that big a deal.
And I certainly wouldn't appreciate them just moving me down to a basement with no security, no form of real communication with anybody from the outside world who could help me in that situation. So,
Susan, you've been there. You were sexually harassed as a young female.
And as were some of my other coworkers.
I mean, how does Steve Marshall look the people of Alabama in the eye and tell them that he's the top cop in this
because
state?
his whole answer to it was, well, we didn't have a manual, we didn't know what to do. And as Josh has brought up many times, if that was a man, they'd know the definition of assault in that instance. It'd be pretty clear.
Yeah.
See, this is why Steve Marshall doesn't like you.
Well, Steve, if I thought you and I weren't going to be friends, I don't know if I could bear it. Speaking of one of my dear friends, Billy Canary, we were able to report last week.
Another dear friend, yes, indeed.
Billy Canary, head of BCA, according to at least 5 public documents, is the owner of the company of his favorite lobbyist, Susan, Dak Swadek and Associates. At least these documents say is owned by Billy Canary, or at least he's a partner or something. 5
different places. We're talking about websites like Manta, Compass, and my favorite, Experian, plus 2 others. Now, Experion's they're pretty clear on when somebody gets a loan who the owner of the company is.
Right, and that document was renewed in 2011.
So this is, unless Billy Canary stole, you know, Dak Swadek's identity and wanted to go put his name on loans that didn't belong to him. Yeah, maybe.
Well, Chandler, as you know, you saw the email, and I put it in the story. Dak Swadek said he'd never seen those documents. That couldn't be true.
Couldn't be true at all. He said that that one document didn't have a date on it. He didn't have any association with it at all, never seen it before. But come on now, do we really expect any less from Billy?
Don't mess with Bill. Leave that Billy alone.
if he had any experience, he'd know that these kind of reports don't have dates on them.
Well,
these are just general reports telling you who owns what.
He says it's not true. I mean, he testified honestly about his relationship with Mike Hubbard. And so why not believe it, right?
Well, let me roll back just a little bit. Didn't he and Billy Canary both testify in the Hubbard trial?
They did. We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back with more news and analysis. Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, for the last 7 years, we have had a front row seat to a vile orgy of greed and corruption. And look, we thought, and maybe it's still possible, that at least for a moment that was over, especially when Kay Ivey took office as governor, Mac McCutcheon became speaker, but right now we're seeing at the State House a return to Hubbard-style politics and passing bills under the cloak of darkness.
It seems like the seasons, they just keep coming around and keep coming around and keep coming around.
Sounds like a flat circle.
This new one they've come out with now, this is beautiful, that you can actually, a legislator, as long as it has to do with economic development, can take money from an outside source, like, I don't know, Southeastern Gas District maybe, or Bobby Abrams. Capital Cups, yeah. And get paid for helping them get their legislation through to help the economic development of whatever company they need to get in place.
I mean, Josh, this HB 317, there's a very simple fix. It's just to change a little bit of the language that says that they cannot use their office to lobby for economic development. This is a bill that comes from Secretary of Commerce Greg Canfield. I am shocked that Governor Kay Ivey has not reined that boy in.
Oh, wait. Canfield, wasn't he another one of the...
Well, we don't want to get it back in. I mean, yes, they could, I mean, he didn't testify in the Hubbard thing, but he was involved big time with getting Bobby Abrams $20 million in workforce development.
Yeah, I understand that there's a simple fix for the bill. Okay, there is a simple fix for the language and all that, but there's even really a simpler fix. Just stop using your office for public or for personal gain. You know, you're already getting paid to do economic development. That's what we pay you for. That's part of the money that we give you. You know, what is it that they make now? 70 grand, 60 grand, 40 grand, whatever it is.
It's
for the part-time gig that they have there that they roll down here to the State House for Tuesday through Thursday for half days. You know, that's part of the money that we give them. It's for doing economic development over there. All right. I mean, why do we have to give them more money? Why should they make more money off of this? I don't understand. What are we making them more money for?
Chandler, it looks like they just want to get paid to do what they're already getting paid to do.
It does, and I wasn't around for the Hubbard era, so correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not what he was convicted on of 2 charges?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
You know, economic development, 2 counts, and Van Davis this week talked to John Archibald at AL.com and said, and John says, well, are they trying to skirt the laws that, you know, convicted Hubbard? And he was like, oh, yeah, they are.
That's exactly what they're trying to do. I mean, if you look at what took place there with Hubbard, with the Capital Cups thing, it's one of the examples they use in that column that John wrote was, you know, it's exactly that. It's taking this guy's money to go and get contracts with the state over here. That's what you're getting paid to do already.
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to be, okay, you want economic development. Well, talk to this guy. Work it out. You're doing this for the good of the state that you're serving. Not for yourself, for the good of the state.
I have to ask you, if I was to write a letter to my legislator and have them, you know, present it on the floor or whatever as wanting economic development in Etowah County. Why should, it wouldn't have as much gravity as putting it on legislative letterhead, right?
Right.
So that makes it, that's very uneven, but that's what they're doing. They're using their legislative letterhead, et al., to make sure that this legislation gets back and get paid on the back end.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and this is just egregious, that these guys, Chandler, make anywhere from $50,000+ a year, and there's just never enough, right?
Oh, it's never enough. It can never be enough. Always got to have more money.
Yeah, I think Mike Hubbard was making, his wife was making $300,000.
Yeah,
$300,000 a year.
And that wasn't
And we're
enough.
broke, and they could barely sustain themselves, the poor family over there.
Well, it was when he was getting economic development.
Yeah, I mean, it just never ceases to amaze me how these guys think it's. I don't know what happens when they walk through the door. I don't understand what happens when they walk through the door and they somehow believe that this is not a public service anymore, and that this is not something that they've come down here to do to serve or whatever, but that they should be making money on the backside of it. I don't understand.
Well, and that's the crazy thing. This statute, if it passes, and they all know it, will negate the Title 36 of the Ethics Code that says you can't lobby and get paid for it while sitting in the legislature.
And there's nobody who thinks that you should.
Right.
No one out there thinks
Right.
that should happen.
But
Nobody.
except for lawmakers.
Yes.
And Greg Canfield, whatever his end game is. I need to switch over to another subject that I know that we probably need some duct tape for Josh's head. Alabama is
You're
one.
gonna duct tape my entire head?
You might need it because it's going to explode. Alabama is only one of 9 states where if you would like to have your driver's license, if you're a transgender person, you'd like to have your driver's license reflect not your birth, let's say you were born a boy, it would reflect that you are now a female. Alabama says, no, 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 unless you've had surgery to change your genitalia to match whatever you claim. I think he's melting down.
I think so.
This is an actual law. Somebody sat down and wrote this dumb out. I don't understand. Bridges? No, we're not going to inspect bridges, but we will inspect penises. Why do we care? It's on a driver's license. Why do we care? Why do we care? Why in God's name do we care about
Because we've been trying to sit and go through instances where we really feel like it mattered, and we couldn't find a single one.
No.
We could not find one
No,
where it matters.
There's no, your driver's license, well, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman.
It
No,
doesn't.
it doesn't.
It would matter if you could drive, but that's not important here.
It would help. It seems to me like it would help more if it accurately reflected the person that you're talking to. If you're a police officer or you're going to the bank to cash a check, I just can't. Some days it's just like,
What Charlie was saying is absolutely true, right? So we sat down and we said, okay, what is an instant of where you would actually need to be identified as a male or a female on your driver's license?
I've thought of one.
Where?
Maybe that way when they're going in the bathrooms, they'd have to flash their license.
There you go.
Which is never going to happen, right? You don't have to, your gender doesn't matter if you're driving. It doesn't matter if you're voting. It doesn't matter if you're cashing a check. It doesn't matter if you're writing a check. Where does it matter that it has to be on the driver's license?
Hillbillies over there, to pander to somebody for votes with the same group of people that every time they see a unisex bathroom, they just hold it. That's who it matters with. It's honest to God.
Well, I really, at one point, I'll admit it, I thought, well, really, you really need to commit to your gender. But I read up on what transgender really means, and what it really means is it's just if they can have sexual reassignment surgery, but it primarily goes to the fact that this is how they identify, and they normally dress that way. They already naturally appear that way, and we're gonna have to just one last thought. Go ahead.
So the police officer pulls over somebody in makeup and all of this and flashes a driver's license as he's a dude. What difference does it make?
I don't.
Well, to quote Steven Tyler, dude looks like a lady, but it doesn't have to address that on your license. All right, we'll be right back with more news and analysis. You're watching The V. we tackle the hard stuff around here.
Improving our education system here in Alabama has always been a challenge, but it's one worth tackling. Providing our students the opportunity and resources they need to become future leaders is one of the most important tasks ahead in Montgomery in the coming years. That's why I was proud to work with my colleagues in the governor's office to pass an ambitious but responsible state budget that helps our kids put their best foot forward. And we invested an extra $13 million in the Alabama Pre-K program, the best in the country. I'm State Senator Tom Watley. We've got a lot of work ahead of us right here at home, and that's why I'm running for re-election.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, the Attorney General's race looks like the big one to watch. I don't know how Tommy Battle fares with Governor Ivey in the Republican primary. I mean, it could get interesting. I don't think so. But what we do know is you have Alice Martin, Steve Marshall, and Troy King all running in the Republican primary, plus Chess Bedsole. That has some stunning characters in it, and it's going to be high drama and high dollars.
It is going to. It's already getting to be high dollars. The first three, Marshall, Alice Martin, and Troy King, they're all three lightning rods on their own. From where it's past press they've had, or their records. I mean, I got to tell you, Alice Martin's record is pretty amazing. Marshall hadn't been around very long, and I really haven't liked
his record's pretty gross.
Yeah, kind of not good.
And then Troy King, until Bob Riley went after him, had a great record.
Yeah.
Which you would think the Bob Riley thing would be a plus.
But, I think it is now.
I think people look back now and kind of see that as a plus. But and remember, whoever wins then has to go and face Chris Christie.
Yeah.
I mean, who switched over to become a Democrat, from New Jersey, and he's come down and going to be a Democrat in Alabama now. And
I think you're confusing the Chris Christies.
What? I'm sorry.
We've got our own.
Oh, we have our own Chris Christie.
We have our own.
Do we have our own Obama too?
We probably do somewhere. He's growing right now, even as we speak.
Miss that guy.
Susan, back to this thing. I think this defines our state for at least a decade, maybe a generation, because the fight will be over the ethics laws.
Right.
We know Alice Martin will clarify and strengthen. We know Steve Marshall will most likely weaken, and we really don't know where Troy King falls down or Chess Bedsole falls down. People say that Troy might not be so hot on ethics, that Chess Bedsole's total unknown. He came out of the woodwork with Donald Trump.
Pun intended, I guess. He's timber family.
Oh, timber money. but seriously, I mean, how do you see this playing out?
Well, I know how I'd like to see it play out. I'd like to see public corruption be the most important issue. Right now, Steve Marshall, instead of being involved in these ethics laws that are going through, bills that are going through now, is busy suing Purdue over fentanyl. Instead of concentrating on what's going on with these ethics laws. That's a concern me. Alice Martin was in the group, Matt Hart, before Luther Strange left, that did a bill that would clarify the ethics law. And I'm pleased with that. I don't know much about Bedsole. I don't know where Troy King's going to fall on this.
Given what you know right now, this race could come down and be another Doug Jones. I mean, this guy Christie is he's got a lot going for him, doesn't he?
He does, I think so. I think it'll be an interesting race between them, definitely. But
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. You can go ahead. I
didn't mean to interrupt. But, I'm just saying, Susan, I mean, we really there's a couple of Democrats that got a shot out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And in this race particularly, I mean, Marshall is, busy making sure we all get to taste coal ash. And so, and really, I think Troy King and Alice Martin are good candidates for this. And especially, King has been there before, and, Alice Martin was in the office. And so, I think that it'll be a good race. There'll be a lot of money put into that race. And then I think Chris Christie, name recognition alone. Who was the guy, the Democrat, John
Kennedy.
John Kennedy.
Yeah, that, that made this, had this run, and it was just because people said, "Hey, there's John Kennedy on the ballot."
And he's running again, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
The fact that the real John Kennedy's been dead for 50 years doesn't matter. I mean, big name ID.
Fake news.
Yeah, right. I think let's skip on to this next one here. I think this is very interesting. Josh, they are wanting to tax the trust fund land that's called under Forever Wild. It's millions of acres or thousands and thousands of acres that are for hunting and fishing, and the state owns them, and they pay for them through the gas and oil trust fund.
Yeah, and
they want to tax it.
Well, that's the dumbest thing. I mean, honest to God, I don't. And this has been a fight, though. If you know anything about the Forever Wild lands that have been there, it's taken into trust by the state, so they'll preserve them, the lands for hunting and fishing, have public lands for people to go out on, and we don't have that many, despite the number of hunters that we have here in this state. We don't really have the same amount of lands as other states do, protected wise, and all of these lands were taken in from people who either donated them or allowed them to be sold for a reasonable price, and it was all, nobody took anybody's lands. It wasn't like an eminent domain sort of situation. They just donated the things, and so here we are. Forever it has been that group of over there have tried to figure out how
to get your Uncle Harold Lipschitz? Is that what you're talking?
They've tried to figure out how to get their hands on these lands. Anything that has anything of value, the retirement funds, anything that's laying around with a little bit of cash, they're all over it. If you want to tax some land, I got some businesses that got some timberland out there you might want to think about taxing.
That'll never happen. that timber society is a very
I mean, there are literally millions of acres of timberland out there that we tax at such a criminally low rate right now that it's killing our property tax take in out of this state.
Yep, and you're right. But Susan, we fought this battle for the last 8 years where they want to do away with Forever Wild, and this is Alabama. People hunt and fish, and we don't have public lands for hunting and fishing except through this.
Right, and the most absurd part of this is state-owned lands. So the state is going to charge itself property tax.
Yes.
I mean, that's just rich.
It's an end run around to get to that money, to get to that oil and gas money. That's all they want.
Maybe some of them could actually charge this as economic development.
Oh,
does it make sense to you?
Then they could get paid.
No. I want to go. We got about 30 seconds. I want to get to this thumping and the gumping, where this is David Burkette, I think his name is, running against John Knight for the Senate in this area.
Yeah.
His campaign manager had a lot to say.
It might be a worse campaign than the Trump organization. Honest to God, it's campaign manager had to quit. It was apparently a near riot after they forced a runoff.
Well, he wouldn't pay the campaign workers, the poll workers.
Your workers.
He didn't hire them.
Where's this?
He didn't hire them.
The campaign hired them, so the campaign has to pay it.
Yeah, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
What happened was the campaign manager and one of the other guys ended up paying for half of it out of their own pocket. Because he was held up in an RV watching the returns.
Then he wanted to put some hoochie mama on the bank account, but we're going to have to leave it right there.
By all accounts, she's a very nice lady. We're very professional.
You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us, because we watch them. Hoochie mama.
That's an old one.
Didn't Bentley have a hoochie mama phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whatchamacallit, the Ace Cup.
Ace Cup.
That's what I kept saying, mud cricket.
Oh.